I'm here with Sofie Steenberger, who has edited Carl Olsen's documentary Meanwhile on Earth, and we are having this talk because it's Copenhagen DOX, and you had your premiere there on the movie in this special setting of Corona time. It's the Danish Film Editors Society who has organized the talk, and we're both members there. Welcome, Sofie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
The film, it has a special language, a special tone. Can you try to describe that tone?
I think actually the Copenhagen DOX has put it in this category of I think at one point I saw that they categorized it as a comedy maybe, or as a funny film. And I think for some people, I think this film is actually funny, even though this film is about death in some ways, and it's about people that work with death, around death. It's actually, for me at least, it's quite humorous, and it's warm and human, or whatever you want to call it. So for me, it's a slow-paced, maybe a little quirky, warm film about death.
Mm-hmm. And how, in your work, how does the material qualify to be a scene? Or what was the thought set, you could say, behind the shootings and how, yeah.
I mean, the director Carl Olsen, he has a very certain approach to material where he takes a long time to compose a scene. As you can see, maybe in the, or as you can clearly see in the visual, it's very he has a very stylized way of making a scene. It's very the shots are composed very carefully. So in that regard, we don't have that much material, besides the fact that he lets the camera roll for a long time. So you ask, like, how does the material qualify as a scene or qualify to be in the film? And it's how should I describe this? I mean, it's the little details, I guess. It's the nuances in the material, and it's about finding a beginning and an ending to these tableau-like scenes, if that sort of answers your questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I can go into detail about it, but I don't know.
Should we try to watch the scene?
Yeah, let's do that.
Den här är god då.
Ja.
Det är riktigt smoothie. Smaka lite.
Ja, fy fan.
Tycker inte det är gott?
Nej. Är det sån en träningssmoothie?
Nej, det är näringssmoothie. Alltså det är både...
Är det näring?
Näring, ja.
Alltså näringsnäring?
Ja. Fyller du alla koppar med alla vitaminer och mineraler som du behöver.
Aldrig då?
Ja. Så bara går du så. Pigg som en larka. Precis att vi så somnar ju. Sen...
Men kör
nej, nu ringer det. Hallå Mats-Ola, det var Lasse.
Ja, hallå.
Hallå. Jo, det är hopp om det.
Ja.
Hallå Mats-Ola, mycket här.
Ja, tjena.
Tjena.
Hej.
What qualifies in this so that it becomes a scene? What is the requisites that made this go into the film?
I think actually, I was thinking about this, but I think for me and for the director, it's actually somewhat the same as in other documentary material, where you look for this. You always, at least for me, I look for these moments where something is happening, or where there is a shift, or where there's a change, or where you can feel something. At least it's like when you watch these sometimes endless amounts of material, maybe not for this film, but in general for documentaries, you always, at least for me, search for this moment where you feel something. And in this material, it's actually kind of the same. So these two guys are driving in the car, and the camera is rigged in the front of the car, looking into the screen through the window, and it keeps rolling, and then all of a sudden, there is this pause. They're at a red light. There's a pause, and then there is this talk about a smoothie that turns into this weird little thing, and then there is a call also on the hands-free in the car. So it's like, where are these small weird things happening? So you're looking for these small places where fun things or weird things are happening. And then also there is another aspect because of the style and the framing. There needs to be a way in and a way out of the scene. So sometimes it needs to be silence or a pause or emptiness in the beginning or in the end or both. So it's like, how do you get into such a stylized scene? Sometimes it needs to be on an action, or sometimes it needs to be on nothing. It needs to be on emptiness or on pause. So in this case, it's because there is this weird little waiting period in the beginning. Then they start, and then we had to find a way out of the scene. And in this case, it's a little more abrupt than in other cases.
So this is all like a development of Carl Olsen's language or way of thinking documentary.
Yeah,
I guess
that is his that is definitely his style. And then sometimes I try to sort of challenge him on it, like we can't have an empty beginning and ending on each cut. And I mean, he knows that it's not that he wants that, but it's a constant talk about this style. How do we sort of sometimes also try and make it a little more fresh or try and change it up a little.
The first frame is, there's like a 1 minute before anything happens in the first frame in the film, and then I just measured it up, and there was like, then that frame holds for 3 minutes.
Yeah, I think it's the longest. I think it's the longest scene in the film. Yeah, and we talked a lot about this, like how do we start this film out? Not promising people that this is going to be a fast-paced film. It's like, okay, so this is it. This is. I mean, if you're still watching after that scene, you kind of know the tempo and the rhythm, and this is it. We're not going to promise you that this is going to be action-packed. So it was deliberate that we had this very long thing in the beginning, actually. And also because it's a very beautiful room, we like it, this weird blue space, and it has this also a little bit of, it also tells us what this film is about in a way, that it's this backstage feeling. At least for me, it's because it's like, yeah, that, at least for me, that's what the film is also about. It's a backstage on death. You see all this backstage.
It made me very curious. I mean,
it's a strange little thing going on.
Yeah, it's a great way to enter the film, and yeah. And what was the hardest part in this journey? What was your challenges?
I think the challenges with this kind of film is always to strike the balance between when is it boring and when is it fascinating? When are you still piquing someone's interest and keeping them curious? So how do we sort of keep that balance between nothing much happening in the scenes, but also giving people a sense of not a narrative, but because there is not really a narrative, but more a sense of, okay, someone actually wants to say something with this film or wants to give you an experience, so that it's not just, as I said, very long startups of a scene and very long exits of a scene all the time. Or how do you get the feeling over time when you watch this film that there is a movement or there is something going on, whatever that is.
Development,
yeah, exactly. That something is also not just randomly placed. So it's that you have a feeling that there is a filmmaker that sort of holds your hand through this this film.
Does it? I mean, that's a matter of opinion, but do you think it carries like a critique of, I don't know, the Scandinavian model or the way we are together as humans, or is that part of a thought you?
It's certainly a looking at the Scandinavian way of dealing with things. It's certainly that, and we talked about this in the editing room as well. It's certainly this very formal way of dealing with death. We have a very orderly system, and we have people to do the dirty work, more or less. There is like one person to transport the body, one person to burn the body, one person to do this and that. And we as the next of kin to people who die, we don't really touch the body, we don't handle the body. And in other cultures, you do that. But in at least Scandinavian, maybe North European tradition, we don't. It's a very matter-of-fact way. So I don't know if it's a critique, but it's at least we're very aware of this being very Scandinavian.
How did you your kind of practical day-to-day, have you been sitting together with Carl all the time, or is it like on off, or what was your?
We sit together quite a bit, because I feel like in this film it's not really a matter of, okay, let me work on this scene and cut it and spend a day cutting this scene and trying to make it work or change it from something to something else. So pretty quickly, I mean, after we watch the material and make a select and then make a cut, then pretty quickly you can make a new version each day. You can just switch it around. So we sat together a lot in the editing process, because it was a lot of talking, maybe sometimes not so much editing. It was more, at one point it was more conceptual and structural talks and not so much hands-on editing. So more or less every day we were sitting together.
Developing ideas, basically.
Yeah, and then making
approaches.
Yeah, exactly. Making a new structure up on the wall, and then like we had these scene cards, little stills from each scene, and then we just shuffled them around on the wall, and then we made it in the computer afterwards. And then at one point it became a matter of how many times a day can you watch a new cut. So sometimes it was, okay, we made a new cut, let's save it for tomorrow morning, and then we'll see it tomorrow. I mean, there is only so many times a day you can watch a film and not be totally wiped out.
Should we try to see another little clip?
Ta så emot Herrens välsignelse. Herren välsigne er och bevara er. Herren låter sitt ansikte lysa över er och vara er nådig. Herren vänder sitt ansikte till er och giver er frid. I Faderns, Sonens och den helige Andes namn. Amen.
Alla vildar som för vår frihet och hoppet det vi
Okay, so in this little clip, there is both the feeling of being backstage on something very sacred and sad, maybe, and holy, but we're with these people, the undertaker and the lady playing the organ, but they're waiting for whatever's going on down in the church room. You can hear the priest say something, and it feels very holy, I guess, or sacred. And then he puts on this music it's a Swedish song, it's a Schlager hit kind of thing, and it's obviously something that the people have chosen to be played at this funeral, but it has this surprising element, for me at least, that it's this very sacred space. We're backstage on it, but then also this music is comical, but it's also very beautiful at the same time. It's like I really like that. And then also there is a cut to the guy in the blue room that we've seen before, and he's sort of just waiting for this funeral to be over so he can carry on with his job, and he's on his phone texting someone.
It's also very dry and somehow funny. Mm-hmm. I think when you see this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the cut to the guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but but also the rooms in itself. I think because it's so lean back, or you're just watching a little bit from a little bit away, and it becomes out as uninvolved and observing and somehow funny, because it touches with something that's normally very emotional, and then you take this angle on that material, or this view on that material.
Yeah, I think it was never meant to be and like a touching film in the way, like overly emotional about death. It was more matter of fact and about the handling of death. And then I think Carl Olsson, the director's approach with these tableau-like images and people in the images being kind of small, and you're seeing the whole body of people, I think inherently it's going to be funny. That's the thing. I mean, I've worked with him before. We worked on our graduation film and the previous film, Patrimonium, which has the same style. And there is just something inherently funny about looking at people. I mean, a human being in a room, walking around, sitting on a chair, it's just, at one point, it's going to be funny, because human beings are weird and funny and do weird things, or their body makes a little sound or something. So there's something in his style and his look on people that is inherently humorous. And then he chooses this very traditionally sad environment or emotional environment, and then makes it funny, I guess, for some people.
So, something I think a lot about when I saw this film, but also in general, is the difference between the filmic reality and the reality. It's two very different things, but the documentary has the claim that it documents reality. So we are under this, we use this word, we document something, but the reality in the film is something completely different. And what are your thoughts when I say this?
Well, I totally agree that I think for a lot of people, documentary means the truth, that this is an objective truth, that you're going to see a film and then you'll be more wise about a certain subject. It's like, okay, we're going to see this film about monkeys, then after I've seen this film, I know more about monkeys, or whatever. And for me, documentaries, they're films just as well as other films, so it will always be a subjective truth or a subjective look. And for this film, it's strange because maybe for some people the scenes seem very staged and very fake, but he's never really, Carl Olsen, the director, is never really asking them to do certain things or asking them to talk about certain subjects. He's merely pointing his camera at them in a very staged way or in a very controlled way. But what happens inside the frame is almost always directly from the characters. So, for example, the two ladies that work with them in the crematorium burning coffins, they talk about that their dog, one of the ladies' dog just died. I mean, he's not asking her to talk about that, and he's not asking them to move in a certain way. So, I mean, it is reality and it is true what happens, but the style sort of frames it in a very controlled setting or controlled way, I would say.
But yeah, and also, and then in a way that makes you think, is this reality? It questions, what am I really watching here? Is it, an outtake of reality, or is it something different?
And I think that's why sometimes in the material we're looking for places where stuff happens where it can't possibly be staged. I mean, it's not what we're looking for all the time, but there are also there are points where we're trying to sort of show that. For example, there is a scene again in the crematorium where they're waiting for, I don't know what, to wait for the coffin to go in, and the lady sneezes, and it's like it's small details in this sense, but I mean, you don't write that stuff. It's just
so authenticity becomes part of the criterion for what becomes a
yeah, but actually all the material is authentic, but sure, it's where does it seem, where are these funny little moments where authentic stuff happens? Or for example, the two people working in the morgue with the dead bodies, when they're driving into one of the abduction rooms or operating rooms or whatever you want to call it, she bumps into something, and she bumps into the trash can, and it's those kind of things that we like, and that it's this very human way of going about life. You work in this very serious field, but of course, because you're a human being, you bump into things, and you swear when you do it, or you sneeze because you have a cold or whatever. So we're definitely trying to pinpoint these very human behavioral things.
Yeah, maybe it's also because you know that the audience are skeptic, and naturally, meaning they are watching a film, they know they're watching a film, so they know that this might be staged. So to work with that, you have these small points where okay, this is reality. Yeah.
For sure. But also, I think actually it's very interesting because it's never really a talk that we have in the editing room, because for us it's very clear that it's not staged. But I think in the work we are definitely looking for these authentic moments, and I think Carl, the director, is like, I can't possibly write this dialogue. It's like, that's why he works in documentary and not fiction, because he's like, I can never find these people. You can't cast these people, and you can't, write a dialogue about, the two guys driving in the car talking about eating at a Chinese buffet, and why do you always eat too much when you're at a buffet and stuff like that. It's the dialogue is just, it's just, you can't really make that shit up. It's just humans.
I think my last question here, when you were editing, like, did you have a certain, when did you know that the film was finished?
Yeah, that's a good question, because you can somehow keep shuffling these pieces around. But yeah, that's a very good question. When did we know that it was finished? I mean, I think there is a certain logic to how this film is put together that's maybe not evident to the audience, but in our heads we all the time had this certain logic, and it made sense to us. Maybe it doesn't really shine through in the same way for the audience. I mean, so I think at one point for us it felt like it was a puzzle that sort of fell into place, but not necessarily completely. I think we had I think it was our editing consultant Monica Willi that said, because she's worked on these kind of films as well, that said like the puzzle never really gets solved. It's like it's a matter of, at one point it's like, this is it. You can't really, all the pieces can never really fit together maybe, but it's I don't know, as good as it gets. Sound a little bit stupid, but it's like it can never be like fully completed, or the puzzle can never be fully completed, but it's at one point you feel like, okay, this in a weird way makes sense up in your own head. Yeah.
So at one point it did.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sofie, for being with me here on this talk. Good luck.
It was very nice.
Film.
Very nice talking to you. It was a nice sort of break from this working at home.
Indeed. Til det.
Super.